Hello all, welcome back to our lecture. This will technically be the last lecture for this class. I'm excited about that. Emeka Udenze is speaking once again. Today we'll be looking at amino acid metabolism very quickly. Before we do that, I have a beautiful quote for you here. It says, because this is the end, we're coming to the end, we want to end it well. It says, all is well that ends well. That is a reminder that it never ends until we finish. Until you're done with the final exam, that is only when we put ourselves at the back and say we are done. And we should be done, and it should be done well. Let's take it off from there immediately. The metabolism of proteins and amino acids. Let's look at overview. This flowchart shows you an overview of how proteins or amino acids are metabolized in the body. Let's take a look at them briefly, and I'll explain a few of the key features that we're going to be seeing as we move along this lecture. Now, the first thing you see here, proteins are biomolecules. Of course, you know proteins are biomolecules and are digested again in the digestive system. When you eat your food that contain protein, they're being broken down with the teeth. They go through the esophagus and they get through the stomach. In the stomach, the digestion of protein starts. So digestion of protein are done with a couple of enzymes. Remember, the pepsin is one of those enzymes. Okay, let me just write a few of the enzymes that helps in the digestion of protein. Pepsin is secreted in the stomach. Remember that? And then to break down proteins. Now, as the food also gets better down inside the small intestine, the duodenum, the whole of the small intestine, let me put it that way. This is not a biology class. So you also get two other enzymes that are secreted. And those two other enzymes are the trypsin, and all of these guys are synthesized as pro-enzymes that are not active. Pepsin comes in at pepsinogen and broken down to pepsin, which is the active. Trypsin comes in at trypsinogen, and also the chymotrypsin comes in and chymotrypsinogen. Yeah, this is the chymotrypsin. Okay, I didn't get the spelling. Chymotrypsin. So these are the enzymes that break down, because in exam at times we'll ask you what are the enzymes. Remember, we know digestion particularly is not being considered part of the biochemistry, but is part of the first process in which organisms use in extracting energy, extracting chemical energy from food. So that is the first process. That's why it's always important, particularly for this GOP class that we'll talk about it. And then finally, remember, all these processes will convert proteins into small peptides, into small oligopeptides and dipeptides and tripeptides. And finally, the small enzymes that are secreted in the small intestine, like the enteropeptidases, let me just say peptidases, the peptidases will finally act on those small peptides, and finally, all of them will be converted to amino acids. So you should know some examples of this amino acid. Such questions can make their way even in your final exams. All right, having said that, so after proteins are converted to amino acid, what happens to amino acid? Now, two things can happen to this amino acid. Number one, let's remember that amino acid can be synthesized. They can be biosynthesized in the liver. So this amino acid pool is a constant pool that is contributed either by the liver or that is contributed by the breakdown of body proteins. When the body proteins are broken down, they can give amino acid, because of course, again, proteins are made from amino acid. And the amino acid themselves can be used to synthesize body proteins. This is called the turnover rate. This turnover rate is the equilibrium between the synthesis of proteins from amino acid and their breaking down. And you know, most of these proteins are used as structural functions. They undergo wear and tear. So when they are broken down, they usually give amino acid, and quickly they can easily be reformed back again to continue their biological function. Now, what happens to amino acid now, which is like the building block molecule, which is at the simpler unit that have been broken down from these proteins. Now, amino acids have two different fates. Some of them are used in forming nitrogenous compound. There are a few nitrogenous compounds. Some of them are beyond the purview of this class. Some of them include the purine. The purines are nitrogenous bases of the nitrogenous bases of purine and pyrimidine. So both of them are used. Both purine, adenine, and guanine are purines. Whereas the pyrimidines are the uracil, the cytosine, and the thymine. Both of these contain nitrogens, and those amino acids can be used in the synthesis of this one. The neurotransmitters, the acetylcholine is a very good example, example of a neurotransmitter, and including other neurotransmitter and other very bioactive peptides like the serotonin and all the rest of them. They also synthesized from amino acid. Other bigger ones, including like the heme. The heme is synthesized from the porphyrin. The heme makes their way both in the myoglobin and hemoglobin, as helping them to do both the storage and transport of oxygen. And also, they can also be used in synthesizing the amino alcohol. The common amino alcohols, we talked about them in the lipid, are the choline. The choline is an amino alcohol. Usually see it in phosphatidylcholine. The sphingosine is an amino alcohol which you find in the sphingolipid. And then the ethanolamine is also an amino alcohol which you also find in in some of these phospholipids as well. So these are one of the fates of this amino acid. However, remember, the amino group particularly cannot be stored, cannot be kept, particularly because the moment you chop out the amino group, it becomes ammonia. Ammonia is toxic to the body. What happens? Now, when amino acids are broken down in catabolism, there are two fates. Let me use a different color since I have read there already. There are two fates. Now, the fate will be number one, they can be converted to ammonia. Now, ammonia cannot be stored for any reason. For example, ammonia quickly reacts with bicarbonate ion and is used in formation of urea. Urea is toxic, cannot be stored. What happens? It is formed in the liver, it diffuses into the kidney, it is formed in the liver, gets into the blood, the kidney does what? Filters it, and is now, the kidney excretes it. That is one of the fate of what? The fate of the ammonia that is what? Gotten from the breakdown of amino acid. Now, the other part that you get is what? You get the ammonia, and then you get the carbon skeleton. The carbon skeleton are usually the keto acid. The alpha keto acid. Let me put it that way. Alpha keto acid. Alpha keto acid are intermediate in both glycolysis and citric acid cycle. So what happens? Both of them will get into citric acid cycle or glycolysis, and they can either be used in the synthesis of glucose, or they are used in providing energy when they are broken down into acetyl-CoA or acetyl-CoA. So this is an overview of the metabolism of proteins and amino acid. Let us now take it off from there. Now, in catabolism of amino acid, there are three stages in nitrogen metabolism. That nitrogen metabolism of amino acid, there are three stages. One, there is a transamination. Transamination is the transfer of amino group. The transfer of amino group from already existing amino acid to another, to an alpha keto acid to form what? An amino acid and a keto acid. That's what we call transamination. This is done by the enzyme, the transaminases. Now, there is the transamination, which simply means removal of an amino group from an amino acid. The moment you remove an amino group from an amino acid, it forms a keto group, and this ammonia can now get to what? Can now react with bicarbonate used in forming urea, which is removed through the kidney, and then urea formation. So the three processes that an amino acid can be transaminated into a keto acid. Remember, in this transamination, a keto acid is left, keto acid. It forms glutamate. Usually, the common receptor is alpha ketoglutarate. So now the alpha ketoglutarate receives this to form the glutamate because it has 5 carbon, and then the amino acid already will now remain as a new keto acid, which now gets into either the glucogenic or the ketogenic pathways for breakdown. Now, if it is glucogenic, it's used in synthesis of glucose. If it's ketogenic, it's converted to acetyl-CoA or acetyl-CoA. Now, the glutamate itself can be deaminated. What deamination means? The ripping off of this amino group from glutamate. The moment you do that, glutamate itself will now remain as alpha ketoglutarate, which is its carbon backbone. The alpha ketoglutarate again can enter what? Either the tricarboxylic acid cycle or the glycolytic pathway to be broken down further. Whereas the ammonia itself will combine with bicarbonate to be used in synthesis of urea. Urea is now excreted through the kidneys. So these are the three stages for what we're going to be looking at in the metabolism of amino acid. Let's take them one after the other. In transamination, the enzymes we call the transaminases. Transaminases are those enzymes that transfer this amino group from an amino acid into a keto acid, alpha keto acid. Now the alpha keto acid does what again? Forms a new amino acid, whereas the amino acid that lost its amino group becomes a keto acid. So it's like you still get the two things you have here over here, but what happens is that you have to look at the chain length to know the specificity of which particular amino acid and keto acid that is formed. Now, in the key reaction involving alpha ketoglutarate, because alpha ketoglutarate has 5 carbons. So if you transfer an amino group to the alpha keto group, you are forming glutamate. Look at what happens here. So this is an amino acid. Remember, this is the amino group in question. This amino group will be transferred to this, and it's going to lose. The moment it loses it loses this hydrogen and forms what? A keto bond. Here, look at what happens. This guy accepts this and becomes glutamate. So this now becomes, okay, let's use a different color. This now becomes the new alpha keto acid. This is the generic form. We do not put the length, so this is a generic one. So depending on the chain length, that is what will tell you what particular keto acid. If it is 3, it's going to be pyruvate. If it is 4 carbon, it's going to be oxaloacetate. If it is 5 carbon, it's going to be alpha keto glutarate. So just these are within the range we usually put it at this level of class. So when this goes here, this becomes the new keto acid. And because this thing accepts the nitrogen from here, it now becomes what? This guy now, let me use a different color. This guy now becomes the new, oh, I said I was going to use a different color. This guy now becomes the new, becomes glutamate, the new amino acid. So basically what you are forming here again, like I said, you are forming an amino acid. In this case, the amino acid is glutamate, because glutamate has 2 carboxylic group at both ends and an amino group at alpha carbon. Remember, we say alpha. Alpha means this carbon now, the carbon number 2. Remember, I said this when we talked about the beta oxidation, that this is usually seen as the carbon number 1 in the old nomenclature. Sorry, this is seen as carbon, is seen as attachment to carbon number 1. So the alpha here is seen to be number 1, but that is not how we do it in IUPAC nomenclature. But this is the alpha carbon. So again, this is the alpha. This is the alpha. This is the alpha. That's why we call them the alpha keto, because the ketone group is in the alpha carbon. That is how they get done. So you now form an amino acid here, and then this becomes what? This becomes a new alpha keto acid. This is what we call transamination reaction. And like I said, the commonest receptor is usually the alpha keto glutarate, which now forms the glutamate, because the next reaction of deamination, which is the second stage, is going to be continuing with glutamate deamination. In the second stage, what is happening there? Now, the glutamate that we formed from the stage 1 will now undergo deamination. What is deamination? The deamination, remember I said this earlier, the enzymes that do this are called the transaminases. The transaminases. So don't forget that. The transaminases does this. Now, in the second stage, again, let's continue. Glutamate can now be converted to another alpha ketoglutarate. Now look at what is happening here. Glutamate loses its amino group again located in the alpha carbon to form alpha ketoglutarate. Now the enzyme that does this is the glutamate dehydrogenase. It catalyzes this removal. And remember, whenever you see any dehydrogenase, either functions through FADH2 or NAD+. In this case, it is the NAD+. The NAD+ is acting as what? The oxidizing agent, and itself is reduced to NADH plus H. So what it does was this enzyme rips out these guys, and then this hydrogen goes to this to do what? To reduce it. And then the remaining carbon skeleton now becomes the alpha ketoglutarate, and the ammonia is now floating. This ammonia is what goes to the next stage, which is urea formation. So glutamate dehydrogenase catalyzes the removal of this amino group and regenerates the alpha ketoglutarate. Again, the alpha ketoglutarate will have to enter either the citric acid or what? Or the glycolysis. And this reaction takes place in the mitochondria, and it is the principal source of ammonium ion that are generated in the humans. Now, there is another type of this reaction that occur by oxidative deamination. In this case, NADH is not needed. It's an oxidative deamination whereby the enzymes that are called the amino acid oxidases will now catalyze the removal of this to form this. In this case, like I said, it does not involve what? The NAD+. So it is not a dehydrogenase enzyme. It is just oxidases. in this case. The same reaction, but then the enzyme involved here are actually called the oxidases. The oxidases, and they're also done. But this pathway of the dehydrogenase is the main source of most of the ammonia that is generated and is used in the urea cycle. All right. So like I said, this reaction, like this one, this alternate reaction is catalyzed by what? The oxidases that is found in the liver. All right. So now we have our ammonia. Again, the alpha keto group, we don't have problem with them. They're not toxic. They can easily enter the what? The other metabolic pathway. But ammonia need to be removed. How is ammonia cleared in the body? It is cleared by being used in forming urea in the pathway we call the urea cycle. So the urea cycle is a metabolic pathway in which the ammonium ions are converted to urea. The ammonium ions are toxic in the body and cannot be kept or stored for any reason. Therefore, they are used in what? In forming what? Urea. And this urea is formed in the liver, it gets into the blood, and is now excreted in the kidney. Now, this reaction can be very complex, but at the purview of this class, I've made a simplified, abridged overall reaction that makes it more simplistic. Here, 2 moles of what? Let's see what happens. 2 moles of ammonia comes to react with what? Carbonate ion to form urea. Now, look at what urea is. Urea simply means you have 2 amino group on both sides. You have an amino group and amino group. That's why we use 2 here. And then you still have, you now have the what? The carbonate carbon in between it. So this is what we call the urea. And this is what needs to be excreted in the body because it cannot be stored. So after urea is formed, it diffuses out of the liver cells where they are formed into the blood. And then the kidneys now filters it out and they are excreted as urine through the ureter. The normal urine in an adult, normal urine from an adult contains about 25 to 30 grams of urea daily. That is to tell you this is the substantial amount of urea that is excreted in the body daily. So the exact amount can vary depending on what the dietary content the person has eaten. Alright, so this is the much we can do in urea formation. We don't want to put you through going through the complex pathways in urea formation. Alright, the next thing. Let's now talk about our first reflection question. The first reflection question, it says, which of the following is the primary purpose of the urea cycle? I just said that. The primary purpose of the urea cycle is to form urea, is to get the ammonium ions that are produced from the deamination of glutamate and convert them to urea. And the first answer is the correct one. All right. We now go to the next thing. Now, the fate of the carbon skeleton. Remember, both in transamination and in deamination, you will be left with the carbon skeleton of the what? Alpha keto acid. Alpha keto acid. What is the fate of this alpha keto acid that are generated in this process? There are 2 fates. They are either used in production of energy or they are used in producing glucose in gluconeogenesis. That will lead us to breaking or to categorizing amino acid into 2 classes as either glucogenic or ketogenic. Glucogenic amino acid are those ones whose carbon skeleton result to the synthesis of glucose. And basically, they result to the synthesis of glucose. They have carbon skeleton that can be metabolically converted to intermediate used in what? Glucose synthesis. And the process of glucose synthesis is gluconeogenesis. So they help synthesize glucose through gluconeogenesis after glycogen stores are exhausted by the body. Remember, we said gluconeogenesis simply means what? A reminder, the synthesis of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. So this is part of what you can use amino acid to do. Now, these are glucogenic amino acid. Ketogenic amino acid are primarily used to provide energy. So basically, these carbon skeletons are broken down into what? They're broken down to acetyl-CoA or acetyl-CoA. And remember, if anything gets to acetyl-CoA, remember when we talked about the electron transport chain, if anything gets to acetyl-CoA, you're going to use it. If it goes through the acetic acid cycle, you are getting 10 moles of ATP. So you are using them for production of energy. So the ketogenic amino acid have the carbon skeleton that can be metabolically converted to acetyl-CoA or acetyl-CoA for energy. So these are 2 classes of what? The fate of the carbon skeleton after both deamination and transamination of amino acids. Now, so the effects of this amino acid have been summarized here a little bit for you to see. We're not going to go into them, but this is a very good way of looking at them. Remember, we said the ketogenic could be converted to acetic CoA and acetic CoA, and if you look at them, there are a few of them here. This isoleucine, leucine, and tryptophan converted to acetic CoA, whereas leucine, lysine, phenylalanine, tyrosine, and tryptophan are converted to acetic CoA, and both of these two are interconverted, and these guys can easily enter the citric acid cycle through citrate and then used in generating energy. The rest of them are what? Are glucogenic amino acids, because they enter the citric acid cycle at one point. Look at what happens here. They enter through this point, and then they can be what? They can move around and used. Remember, the last product of citric acid cycle is oxaloacetate, and once you get oxaloacetate can be used to produce what? Phosphoenol pyruvate and glucose in what? Gluconeogenesis. This is gluconeogenesis. That is what is happening. So that's why the rest of these other amino acids are said to be what? Gluconogenic amino acid. From the asparagine, the aspartate, the tyrosine, the phenylalanine, the aspartate, the isoleucine, methionine, valine, glutamate, glutamine, histidine, proline, and arginine are all glucogenic amino acids. And you see the colors make them different. So these guys are the ketogenic. The rest of these other guys are the glucogenic amino acids. We now go to the next reflection question. It says, what is the name of the amino acids that yield carbon skeleton that is degraded to pyruvate or other intermediate capable of conversion to glucose? Those of them that are used converted to glucose. What are they? Good examples. If they're going to be used in synthesis of glucose, we call them glucogenic amino acid, and number 2 becomes our correct answer. All right, it can be ketogenic, alphagenic, I don't even know what that means, and pyrogenic also might mean something else, but the glucogenic is the correct answer. We now go to amino acid biosynthesis. See, the purview of this class is not to cover the synthesis of amino acid, but I want to make an important point in just this one slide. Now, the synthesis of amino acids also involves the transamination by transaminases, the amination by either by aminases. These aminases also act in the same way of what? The deamination. It's just the same enzymes that also act here. Now, however, after both this transamination and amination, transamination is taking this amino group from one amino acid, as we said before, and giving a keto acid to form amino acid. Amination is taking amino group from ammonia from the body anywhere, and then attaching it to what? Alpha ketoglutarate to form an amino acid, which is opposite of the second the first step. I talked about it already. Now, however, some of them can be produced directly from these two steps, but so many of them cannot. So what happens is that they are now modified they undergo what we call post-amination modifications to be converted to the specific amino acid. So there are 3 stages I'm going to be looking at here. Some of them are formed from glycolysis intermediate. Glycolysis intermediate is like 3-phosphoglycerase and intermediate of glycolysis. Serine, cysteine, and glycine can form from here. Pyruvate easily. The transamination of pyruvate, if you just add an amino group to pyruvate, wait, let me put that in well. If you add an amino group to pyruvate, you're forming alanine immediately. So that's direct conversion. Both of these two are from intermediate of glycolysis. Then there are some of them that are intermediate of citric acid cycle. The intermediate of citric acid cycle include oxaloacetate is the common intermediate. Now, direct transamination of oxaloacetate forms aspartate immediately. If you transaminate this keto acid, this is a keto acid, oxaloacetate, if you transaminate it forms aspartate, and aspartate can now be modified by adding one other amino acid to it to form that amide bond at the terminal end to form asparagine. Both of these guys come from this. Now, alpha-ketoglutarate, remember we talked about this in our commonest example. If you add an amino group to alpha-ketoglutarate, you form glutamate. Glutamate can now be converted to arginine by adding, can be converted to glutamine by adding an amino group again. It can be modified to both proline and arginine by the other respective enzymes. Now, other ones are also derivative of what? Phenylalanine, which is what? The aromatic group. Phenylalanine is an essential amino acid. We'll talk about the essential amino acid in the next slide. So phenylalanine can be what? Modified to what? Tyrosine by hydroxylation. That's what you do. Phenylalanine does contain benzene ring. Like I said, we're not going to be going into the details of this. So if you have your phenylalanine, let me not get into that. You know, I just don't want to get into that. But if you get your phenylalanine and you add an OH group at one end, it becomes your tyrosine. So because I don't want to give you this example because I don't want to overwhelm you, but you know, this is part of those theories you need to know, that phenylalanine cannot be converted to what? Tyrosine by hydroxylation. All right. Like I said, I'm going to talk about essential amino acid in the next slide. Essential amino acid are those amino acids that the body cannot make. We must obtain them in the diet. You have to eat enough of them so that they can be used in making, you know, proteins. However, the non-essential ones, we can make them in the body easily. We make them in the body, so we don't need them dietarily. And some of these ones have been. So the essential amino acids are listed here, whereas the non-essentials are listed here. So you can take a look of these and try to know a few of the common ones. All right. Like I said again, the essential amino acid, the body can make them. Body can make these guys. No. The essential amino acid, the body cannot make them. So we must get them from the dietary sources, from food. Whereas the non-essential ones, our body can make them. And this list is here for you to take a look at. You can always pause this video, look at this list, and continue the lecture. All right, we'll now go to reflection 3. In this reflection, it says, which of the following is a non-essential amino acid? If you look at it, essential amino acid is, the non-essential amino acid is serine. We can easily make serine from 3-phosphoglycerate. The 3-phosphoglycerate is where we make serine from. So it's essential, is a non-essential amino acid. Whereas histidine, isoleucine, and tryptophan are all what? Essential amino acid. You can always go back and look at what? The table in the previous page to confirm this. And now, I want to end this lecture because I said this is the last lecture in this series by talking about the metabolism of fuel molecule. Remember, I've talked in this part of the class, I've taught you everything about the metabolism. So I want to summarize by talking about the metabolism of fuel molecule. Remember again, the fuel molecules are those molecules that can be used to generate energy, and they are what? The carbohydrates, the proteins, and lipids. They are the fuel molecules that can be used to generate energy. So let's take a look at them one by one. Carbohydrate is digested into the monosaccharide in the digestive system. It's broken down into glycolysis to pyruvate. Pyruvate is converted to acetyl-CoA in the mitochondria and is now degraded also in the mitochondria into citric acid cycle. Now it releases a lot of NADH and a few ATP, and the NADH and the FADH are now done what? The FADH2, remember, it releases enough of this FADH2 and NADH, which are now oxidized in what? In the electron transport chain. And they oxidize the electron transport chain and they're used in making ATP. Now, what happens to lipids? Let's take lipid from the left. The lipid can be broken into two. Remember, triglyceride, particularly the triglyceride. The triglyceride contains 3 fatty acids and 1 glycerol. So when they are being ripped apart by the lipases convert them to glycerol and fatty acids. The glycerol can enter the glycolysis as we saw in the lipid metabolism. The glycerol can be converted to glycerol phosphate by the enzyme glycerol kinase. Then the glycerol 3-phosphate can now be converted to dihydroacetone phosphate by the enzyme glycerol 3-phosphate dehydrogenase, and then from there it enters glycolysis and is broken down in a typical normal pathway of glucose. Again, fatty acid itself undergoes beta oxidation in mitochondria, and beta oxidation yields a lot of acetyl-CoA depending on the length of the hydrocarbon chain. And again, if you get to acetyl-CoA, it usually goes to citric acid cycle, gets to electron transport chain, and generate what? ATP in oxidative phosphorylation. What about the proteins? The proteins are on this hand. Remember, this is the first fuel molecule. This is number 1, this is number 2, and this is number 3. What happens to proteins? Proteins are, like I said, they are broken down. Remember, they have 2 fates. In oxidative deamination, we release what? The amino group ammonium is released. However, they form the keto acid. The keto acid, they have 2 fates. What did I say? They can either be glucogenic. The glucogenic amino acid can enter here in the pyruvate and used for the synthesis of what? Of synthesis of glucose in gluconeogenesis. However, other ones are broken down into acetyl-CoA directly or acetyl-CoA, and they are the ketogenic amino acid. So the ketogenic amino acid can go to acetyl-CoA. They can also join the what? The citric acid cycle, and then they're also broken down through the usual channel to release ATP. However, after the oxidative deamination that you release the ammonium ion is going off as what? Ammonia. That's how usually the body ammonia is insoluble. So usually it quickly does what? Is converted to ammonium ion, which is the conjugate acid of ammonia, which is the base. Now, ammonia itself is now used in the urea cycle to form urea, and the urea itself cannot be stored in any way. It must be excreted by the kidney. So this is the summary of the metabolism of the fuel molecules that we've been talking about since chapter 22. And having said this, we've come to the end of this lecture. Thank you again for listening. Bye.